Welcome to the Aligned Powerhouse, the podcast for executive women who are done leading from burnout and ready to rise from alignment. I'm your host, Dr. Brittany McGeehan, licensed psychologist, high performance and mindset coach, and guide for high achieving women who are ready to lead, live, and love without abandoning themselves. Here, we unpack the nervous system truths, mindset shifts, and emotional patterns that drive your leadership so you can build power from the inside out. Let's get into it. All right, guys. Hello. Welcome back. Okay, so today's episode, I sit and I think about who I'm speaking to as I'm speaking to you, my community, my audience. I'm thinking about the woman who is probably driving in her car on her way to work in rush hour, or you are taking your walk to get your steps in, or perhaps maybe you're in a season that is closer to mine and you are prepping snacks and just getting ready for your day, right? I literally imagine that you and I are just sitting down to powwow and have a cup of coffee together. I also, being the person that I am, and I batch content like an absolute boss, I'm thinking months ahead of time, right? So this will be airing closer to Valentine's Day. So I'm imagining that it is probably colder outside versus like the 75 degrees. I'm recording this near Christmas, and of course it's going to be like 75 degrees here. So I'm imagining that it is cooler, and I'm specifically recording today's episode with Valentine's Day in mind. Now, for those of you who know me, you know that Valentine's Day is one of my favorite holidays. Not so much in the commercialized, we have to buy whatever kind of gift, right? Like, let's go buy the chocolates or the flowers or whatever it is. But if you know me, you know that I love. A phrase that I say over and over again at the retreat is like precious babies. I adore people. Honestly, I adore myself. And I think that just naturally pushes out into the way that I view other people. And so I'm thinking about you walking into Valentine's Day as a high-performing woman who holds it together everywhere else, and at home sometimes feels as though you are not being held, or that the care that you are so good at giving to everyone else, you are not able to receive at home. I'm thinking about you. This episode is for you. Specifically, this episode is for you if you've ever had a moment where you have been, if you have ever said the words, I shouldn't have to say this. I shouldn't have to tell him. I shouldn't have to tell her. Like, we've been together for 30 years and I've already said it a million times. And so I'm not going to say it again, but I'm expecting that for, in this instance, Valentine's Day, or my birthday, or whatever it is. I'm expecting that we go to dinner. I'm expecting to be made to feel a certain way. Today's episode is for you, friend. Okay? Because this is something that every high-performing woman struggles with. And the reason for that, we're going to get into it, right? But the reason at its core is that one of your trauma, like if you walk into a meeting with me, if you walk into a meeting anywhere and you say, I shouldn't have to say this. He should know that I want flowers. He should know that it isn't the gift that matters. It's the time. Then I can tell you that mom or dad was emotionally not present, and that one of your trauma responses as a result is hypervigilance and playing God and acting like you know what the whole room is doing. Okay? So if you're ready to turn off this podcast, keep listening, but pull out a journal, because you know who we are. We are going to have tactical takeaways. We're going to have the tips and the tricks, and let's actually go and do something. This community to me is more about a movement forward of high-performing women who are no longer willing to accept only feeling success at work and just acknowledging, gosh, I hear this a million times, that if you're doing really well at work, then behind closed doors, life is just going to suffer a little bit, because there's no such thing as work-life balance. Now, let me tell you, I absolutely do not believe in work-life balance, but I 100% expect and deeply desire for you a life where you feel so aligned and you are so in sync with your systems with your mental health that you actually drive excellence across all categories, across all settings. Okay. So let's jump in and start unpacking this. Okay. We'll make it comfortable. Okay. So here's the issue is that high achieving women are incredibly competent. They get the job done. And that competence is actually what usually breaks their relationship. Let's say that one more time. High achieving women are incredibly competent. And that competence is actually what breaks their relationships behind closed doors. Let's unpack this. Let's talk about what this really means, right? Because this is not because you are doing too much. This is because you are expecting someone else to engage in mind reading and hypervigilance rather than building the muscle of clarity and clear communication. So, if this is you, if this is a skill that you need to build, let's jump in. First off, let's talk about the core pattern. Let's talk about what's really going on underneath the hood. Because if we misdiagnose an issue, then we are going to treat the wrong thing. We're going to head in the wrong direction, and you're going to end up in this cycle over and over and over again. And if you know me, you know that I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in doing it right and then being done with it and then go live your life. I wish on you, as my listener, the most boring, beautiful, predictable life in the whole world with spontaneity where you want it. But I want you to be so healthy that you are bored. Okay. But here's what happens is that high achieving women, you grew up in a home where that was not the case. Okay. You grew up probably as an oldest daughter, although I'm learning that my audience is expanding. So it's not always this, but oftentimes it is the oldest daughter and or the oldest daughter fill in, right? Maybe one who was middle or youngest, but stepped into this place of being needed in a specific way anyway. So what happens is, hey, little brother, little sister, they want to play with you. I want you to let them play with you, right? Mom tells you this over and over and over again. Or little brother starts crying. Little sister needs something. But now you're feeling like you lost attention from mom because, hey, a minute ago we were playing Play-Doh and we were doing something together. And now you've taken your attention and you've given it to my brother. And mom looks at you and she says, hey, I need you to just get a grip. I need you to take a breath. I need you to be okay because I need to go over here and tend to brother and sister. Or perhaps it is that you never even learned how to play in the first place and you weren't given that emotional attention to even have it be removed. Perhaps you were just expected to help around the house, right? I have sat down across the table from women and heard them say, I had my first doll, I had my first toy at 8 or 9 years old, right? They spent years without truly being acknowledged for who they were. But hey, when they went and played sports and they got a goal in soccer, or they ran super fast, or they picked up a musical instrument and they were incredible at it, then mom and dad are paying attention. Then they're getting the smile that they crave. Then they are getting that beautiful moment of connection that you were craving. Therefore, your nervous system encodes this as safety. And this is what we do to stay in connection. So what happens is that same little girl walks into a room with tense adults. Maybe she is 10 years old, say, and she's scanning the room for a problem. She's scanning the room to make sure that everyone else in this space is happy and okay. And so if mom and dad are fighting and there's tension in the room, kids pick up on that. So you probably picked up on that. And so you walk up and you start playing with your brother in such a kind way, or playing with your sister in such a kind way. Or maybe you engage with mom on a topic that you know that she enjoys. She really likes makeup. So, Mama, will you come do makeup with me? Right? This happens over and over and over again. And underneath the hood of seemingly something that is harmless is a little girl who learned to anticipate needs as a way of remaining safe and connected. This becomes inherent. It literally becomes a part of your biology because biologically we are driven to be in connection with our caregivers, right? Think about this from an evolutionary perspective. We as human beings, we would like to survive. This goes for any animal, and yes, we are animals at our core, is that we are driven at our core by survival when you strip everything else down, right? Therefore, as children, we behave in such a way as to stay in connection and to stay safe. Therefore, think about this. If you are someone who expects that other people are just going to know what it is that you need, especially your partner, this tells me that your biology is hypervigilant and it is used to having to work double time and staying in a place of anticipating other people's needs. Okay. Here's what happens, right? Fast forward 30, 40 years, and now we inherit our template of how to relate with other people, but especially our partners. But anyway, we inherit the idea of how to do this with the very first people that we were in relationship with, which in this case is mom and dad. If they taught us to be responsible for their needs, if they taught us that when we see them crying, we give them a hug and it's our job to make sure that they're okay, then I want you to copy and paste that dynamic onto this person that you are now in relationship with. Now, the idea is that if you have spent your entire life taking care of every single other person around you and being a martyr, because at its core, that's what this is self-sacrifice in the name of being a good person, being a good daughter, being a good leader, being a good wife, being a good mother, whatever. Martyrdom. We then expect that the people sitting across from us are going to do the same thing. Right. And we have this entitlement, this expectation that comes out because it's an emotional regression at its core, which means we're operating from a place of a younger brain, a younger developmental time period where there's a lot of entitlement in toddlerhood, right? There's a lot of entitlement in adolescence. Every mother of a teenager knows this. You've seen this, right? And it is developmentally appropriate. Some of my clients get so itchy whenever I say this, that it is literally the way that their brain is wired, is that everything is about them. And this is part of how they form their identity. This is part of how you formed your identity. And just because you didn't receive what you deserved and what you should have had in the first place, just because someone primed your biology to be hypervigilant, does not mean that you are now entitled to retribution from someone who didn't harm you in the first place. That retribution, that apology, the reciprocity that you are seeking needs to come from the person who actually did the harm in the first place. And that is mom and dad. Okay. If you cannot acknowledge this fact, you will continue to drive your relationship into the ground, all while simultaneously, honestly, probably climbing the corporate ladder, building the business, expanding it, probably scaling way quicker than what you should actually be doing. And because there's this misalignment, because you don't have capacity for this growth in the first place, you will probably end up divorced. So let's talk about why this fails, okay? Because unspoken expectations do not create romance. They are creating a quiet resentment that is going to end in the failure of that relationship every single time. Here's the reason that it doesn't work, okay? Because asking is going to feel like failure or neediness, right? Like you're operating from a younger state of mind. When I say this out loud, most clients are like, oh yeah, that is kind of silly to expect that someone can read my mind, right? In a childlike world, and this is why this fails, in a childlike world, children expect that their parents know what they need because developmentally, that was true when they were babies. And so this is the truth that they have been operating in, right? For quite literally their entire lives. Well, when I cried and I told them that I needed something, or even sometimes without the cry, they fed me on time. They changed my diaper. They cuddled me. They held me close. They anticipated my needs and my needs were met. Fast forward into being a toddler. You're still essentially on a schedule, right? Mom and dad are thinking through, hopefully. Yeah, I'm thinking about like 4th of July, right? My friends went to a fireworks show. And a part of me really wanted to go, but the other half of me knew this was a huge show. It was out and out, and they do it every year. It's spectacular. It's a wonderful show. It is way too people-y for me. It's too people-y. It's too people-y. Starts at like 7:00. To me, it sounds like my worst nightmare. Okay. I was anticipating first and foremost my needs of like 7:00 with toddlers, loud noises in the sky, and tons of people around. I'm going to be overstimulated. And then I was anticipating my toddlers who are not super regimented like we used to be when they were much younger, but those friends like their sleep. They like their sleep. They also really appreciate a regulated mother, and they don't like big, loud noises, right? Trains, if we're too close, that scares them. So I was able to look a little bit forward, use my executive functioning and use it in place for them, right? That is scaffolding. That is a developmentally appropriate way of intervening on behalf of a toddler in a way that we all should have received. Because children do not have the ability to be like, excuse me, mother, I am actually going to be overstimulated if you put me in a huge crowd with loud noises and you become overstimulated. Like, it's just not going to happen. Okay. And if it does, that's honestly a little bit concerning. And your child's probably going to be listening to this in a few years, just to be real honest with you. So here's what happens. Or also, what we see is that if they do ask for their needs, right? If you asked for your needs growing up, then you probably heard, I don't have time to give you attention. I don't have time to give you whatever it is, right? So we are operating from this younger state of mind, right? This is the process of emotional regression. I want you to imagine you're putting on a pair of glasses. All of a sudden the world is blue. All of a sudden the world is brown, but the brown stands for a different developmental season or moment or age and time. So all of a sudden I see the world through my 5-year-old self. Wounds, like the brain development, the ability to integrate emotions, all of it. Okay. You literally become a 5-year-old. And then you are trying to engage in an adult relationship from this frame of mind. So you don't become conscious. You don't become aware of the fact that you are expecting something that, quite frankly, is nonsensical. It is nonsensical to imagine that anyone outside of you is going to read your mind and get it right. It is also incredibly unfair to expect your partner to help you heal from wounds that were caused by mom and dad. As much as we would like for that to be the case, and as much as you can receive that in this type of partnership, it is incredibly unfair to expect it. It is incredibly unfair to hold someone to that standard, and you're misplacing some of that emotion in the first place, okay? So this is why this will fail over and over and over again, is I want you to literally imagine that if you are in this place of Valentine's Day is coming up and I'm not going to say anything, I'm going to stay really quiet because I know that my partner knows what I want. And I'm not going to verbalize that. I'm not going to be clear. I'm just going to stay quiet and I'm going to wait. That is the definition of a toddler or a child, right? Maybe a little bit older, throwing a fit and being like, figure it out. Like you are in a, you are in a control battle. Okay. So at this point, there is essentially a 5-year-old who is in active relationship with an adult. That does not work over and over and over again. Okay. I don't care how many episodes of Secret Life of Mormon Wives you have watched. That is gross. We do not put children in relationships with adults. It does not work. The biology is not compatible. Okay. So here's the other thing that happens is at the same time, you are then operating in a way that is going to cause or invite your partner to experience you as being distanced, right? And here's the thing I want you to keep in mind, and a really common misconception is women will come into my retreats and they will say, I am the one who's really struggling with X, Y, and Z. And the idea is that they are the ones who are traumatized. They are the ones with the family histories. Their partner has it all put together. And that is also absolute nonsense. Birds of a feather flock together, okay? Every single time. Every single time. So if you are coming in with trauma drama, 1 and 1 is 2. Your partner also has trauma drama. In fact, you two have chosen each other for a very specific unconscious reason because your nervous system said, yummy. I think that person looks like all of my unhealed work. I bet if I get in relationship with them and my nervous system says, ooh, this feels like home because you remind me of the way that mom and dad hurt me, then there's an opportunity to heal. This is true across the board until you get very conscious about the things that have harmed you and built your relational template growing up, okay? So at this point, you have a partner who has relational wounds that are compatible with yours. If your stress response is to withhold and to get cold and just sort of back off, I guarantee you that is going to remind them of their unhealed work. And how are they going to respond to that? I guarantee you it's not going to be with flowers and dinner and intention and care, okay? You're not going to get what you're looking for by moving about this way. So all of this is fine and lovely. Let's talk about what you actually do with this. Let's talk about the skill deficit that's going on here, okay? So the skill isn't emotional expression. It is clear articulation. And this is where a lot of people get it wrong. They think, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what's happening inside of me. And so therefore, let me figure out what I'm feeling. And I'm going to tell my partner what I'm feeling. I feel upset when blah, 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 blah. I feel like I'm not seen. I feel whatever it is. Guys, this is what I want to hand you. I want to restructure. I want to reframe this. The emotion is important. It really, truly is. But that is a different conversation. When it comes to conversations, I want you to really be clear on what it is that you are looking for and what you need out of that conversation. Do you need to be validated? Do you need to know that what you're feeling makes sense and that you're not alone? Okay, that goes in one bucket over here. Your next bucket is to communicate a need, to evoke a certain kind of behavior. If this episode piqued your interest, you are in that bucket. There is a behavior that is missing from your relationship, which yes, has an underlying emotional need, all of those things, but there is a need, there's a different behavior that you are seeking and that you are wanting from your partner. Therefore, what this sounds like is, hey babe, I wanted to give you a heads up. I know that Valentine's Day is coming up and I wanted to share with you, I really do expect that you are going to plan something. And here is why it would mean the world to me. And I really wanted to be intentional about giving you time way far in advance. So that way we aren't put in the situation where I'm let down again. I wanted to give you a week's notice. I wanted to give you 2 weeks notice. And here's what it would feel like. Here's what it would mean to me if you plan dinner. It's really not about the dinner. It's actually about the fact that you would be putting me at the top of your priority list and that I receive love and care through acts of service, through someone making time for me, even though they're busy. This is something I really missed in my childhood, and it would just be so healing for me. And also I really enjoy Valentine's Day, and it would be fun to celebrate love, right? Like that is, you are not only sharing what the change behavior is that you're looking for. Notice this isn't a boundary. If you don't take me to dinner, then I'm leaving. Like we're not looking for that. Okay. But this is the specific behavior that I'm looking for. Here's why. Here's why I would like this. And here's what it would mean to me. Because I guarantee if you are someone who receives love through quality time, through prioritization, then you are married to someone who is wounded in that exact same way. Their mother probably made themselves the center of their universe, and they were expected to give time, emotional energy, physical energy, taking care of this woman in their life. Therefore, when you ask for something that is very appropriate, you're not asking for the moon, it can be interpreted again with that lens. All of a sudden, the world for them is pink and they're seeing it different. So you're actually grounding them into their prefrontal cortex, because if they're becoming regressed, they're getting younger, they're in their limbic system. This is that survival part of our brain that I keep referring to of its job to keep us safe. So like imagine that right now you're asking from your prefrontal cortex, which is grounded conductor. We want to be there when we're engaging in challenging or nerve-wracking conversations. And then you're talking to someone who's in their limbic system, the survival. They are going to interpret you naturally, biologically as a threat. You're going to be treated that way. We want to help ground them and ground you as much as we are able to in the idea that you are wife, you are partner, you are present, you are not mom, and you are not dad, right? And the way that you do that is by reminding them what this would mean for them. And maybe not like I'm not saying trauma dump on anyone, but I am saying let them know like why this is important to you, why it would mean a lot, right? And then get quiet. Now, here's what is really important. Like I want you to actually go in and practice writing this down. If you are someone who slips into blame, shame, or hinting around things, right? Like we are being direct. I'm not saying you have to overfunction and say, I want to go to dinner and I want it to be at, I don't know, Chick-fil-A on the 14th at 3 p.m. and I want the kids to go here. Like, no, I'm not saying plan the date, but I am saying be explicit. Don't just say, hey, it would mean a lot if we celebrated Valentine's Day this year. Like, okay, but we can do better. And you and your high performing and your KPI crushing, like all, I know that you're capable of this. Okay. Be very direct. I would like for you to plan some time for us to spend together, and here is why. Okay. So we want to keep it short. We want to keep it clear, right? And you can even consider saying, when X happens, when you put me at the top of your to-do list, I feel connected to you. But when you forget about Valentine's Day, I feel disconnected. Or when you say something, when you say that you will do something and you do not follow through, it's called say-do correspondence, right? Then I feel very disconnected. And here's the kicker to all of this. Once you make this request, once you are clear about what it is that you are looking for, I want you to close your mouth. I want you to get quiet. I want you to notice what happens for the person sitting across from you. And if they start to regress, if they start to spin out and have a whole bunch of emotion and go into this whole thing about nothing they ever do is good enough, and you're sitting there like, ooh, like that's really intense. I want you to disengage. I want you to put yourself in a little jar and seal up the lid and hold yourself at a distance, knowing that what's happening is that you're being projected on. And this is just a messy part of relationship. Just because it happens doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the relationship, but it also doesn't mean you have to engage or pick that up, right? So again, the reason that this is challenging, because I guarantee you, probably 7 out of 10 of y'all who are listening are not going to do anything with this. You're going to listen and you're going to put it in your little bucket of things to do. And you're going to say, now it's in my toolbox, because we high performers, we love a good toolbox. And it's probably never actually going to make it to fruition. You're never actually going to try on this skill. If you prove me wrong, come slide into my DMs and be like, fool, I was in the top 30% of your listeners. The reason that this is hard, the reason this is challenging to actually execute is because your biology is telling you not to do it, right? Your nervous system is wired to keep you safe. And If you're still with me, then your nervous system has been built around hovering and anticipating everyone else's needs and not actually addressing your own, not advocating for what it is that you need. Okay. In fact, your biology as a high-performing woman is teaching you that needing someone else actually feels dangerous. But that's like a whole other episode. So keep in mind that asking is going to disrupt this sense of control that you live in, right? Clarity also opens you up to disappointment. What if they don't do it? But here's the kicker. Here's the skill. Here's the muscle, the thing you'll come back to over and over again. We make a request in hopes that someone else is going to be able to meet this request. Yes. But what is even more important than the relationship you're making the request from is that you have now built the skill of understanding, one, what it is that you need, and two, that you knowing that you are worthy enough to say and make this request. That carries across all relationships, not just your active partnership that you are in. This goes for your kids. This goes for your boss. This goes for your team. This is how you actually take things off of your plate that were never supposed to be there in the first place. Okay. Now, there's also probably some identity work that's going to needed to be done here as well, but that is another episode as well. So what I want to leave you with today is that connection does not require mind reading. In fact, control stifles connection. Connection actually requires courage. And it requires a deep courage that you as a high performing woman you probably hear that word and you're like, I have plenty of courage. I do everything. I do all the hard things, right? Like you pride yourself in that, but then cool. When was the last time you opened yourself up to disappointment, especially in the most important relationship in your life, right? When was the last time you were open and vulnerable? You stuck your neck out far enough to really, truly be disappointed and helped regulate yourself if you actually moved through that disappointment. Again, connection requires courage and vulnerability. It cannot coexist with control. Alrighty, y'all. I will see you on the next one, and I hope this was helpful. Alrighty, friend, that is all for today's episode of the Aligned Powerhouse podcast. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And do me a favor, if this episode resonated, I want you to share it with another powerhouse woman in your life who is ready to lead and love from a place of self-trust. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review. It really does help more women find this work. New episodes drop every week. Until then, lead with self-trust and let yourself be seen.